couple of minutes of miscellaneous to talk about a couple of things. So we'll get right into it. Ordinance number 648, 2020 by Councilmember Casey and Kelly, authorizing the Director of Public Utilities to exercise the first option to renew contract number PS 2018-64 with Ernst & Young LPP to manage and administer the Oracle Customer Care and Billing System. Assistant Director.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Department of Public Utilities has contracted with Ernst & Young to manage its Oracle Customer Care and Billing System used by the Division of Water. System manages customer billing, meter reading, meter inventory, customer appointments, and related reporting. It's integrated with a number of systems, including automated meter reading, bill printing, electronic bill presentment and payment, and cashiering. Original contract was for 3 years with 2 additional 1-year options to renew, which we are currently requesting, and Commissioner Margavicius is here to provide any additional details.
Commissioner.
Yes, so as AD Kane indicated, it is the billing system. It has been our system since 2009, and Ernst & Young is very instrumental in making sure that we keep this thing maintained and running well.
All right, and welcome, Director. I see you
you.
around here now. Basically, this is to support and upgrade the AMR system with the bills and the payments to keep all our payments managed. Any questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, without objection, number 648, 2020 passes. Ordinance number 661, 2020 by council members Casey and Kelly by departmental request, authorizing the purchase of 1 or more requirement contracts of labor and material needed to clean high voltage insulators, bushings, lighting arresters, transformers, and associated equipment at various locations for the Division of Cleveland Public Power, Department of Public Utilities for a period of 2 years. Director?
Yeah, thank you. And I apologize for my tardiness. This contract is set in place to expedite maintenance and cleaning of insulators, bushings, lighting arresters on energized equipment. Without cleaning road salt and other contaminants off this equipment will arc and sometimes cause corrosion and things like that on our transmission and distribution system, causing large scale system outages, which we obviously don't want. The estimated cost is around $425,000. The funding source is from our operating budget, and this legislation will lead to 1 or more requirement contracts for a period of 2 years.
All right, and this is basically the routine maintenance around the equipment to help keep the lights on?
Yeah, in short, Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
All right, any questions? All right, seeing none, 660, without objection, 661 passes. Ordinance number 663, 2020, authorizing the purchase of 1 or more requirement contracts of labor materials necessary to maintain, test, inspect, repair, enhance, or replace HVAC systems and components, including but not limited to boilers, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, environmental controls, associated software, and components, including rentals and installation, if necessary, for the Division of Water, Water Pollution Control, Cleveland Public Power, and the Office of Radio Communications, Department of Public Utilities for a term of 2 years. This is by council members Casey and Kelly by departmental request. Director?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This legislation is needed to maintain and repair and enhance our heating, boilers, cooling, air conditioning, and ventilation systems. The operation and integrity of these facilities are critical for the supply of potable water, sewage removal, and electricity from a health and safety welfare for the population of the city of Cleveland and neighboring communities. This is a requirement contract. Its estimated cost is $1.6 million over a 2-year period.
On a Saturday to ride through the west side.
What's that?
Go ahead.
Okay. This is a 1 year is 800,000, second year 800,000. This legislation is a requirement contract for a 2-year term.
Again, this is a routine maintenance thing.
Yes, on HVAC.
Any questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, without objection, 663, 2020 passes. Now, to the clerk, when I printed the calendar off, I couldn't get the legislation for 665 and 666 to print. So I was wondering if the clerk could help me with that in reading the legislation on 665, if you have it.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Ordinance number 665-2020 by Council Members Casey and Kelly by departmental request, authorizing the purchase by one or more requirement contracts of labor and materials necessary to test, maintain, and repair equipment that provides backup electrical power, backup diesel drives for pumps and backup generators supplied by off-road fossil fuel for the various divisions of the Department of Public Utilities for a period of 2 years.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. Director?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Department of Public Utilities has a number of facilities, including the water filtration plants, pump stations, sewer lift stations, electrical substations, and other buildings, each of which have a variety of backup power equipment, including turbines, generators, electric generators, diesels, and others. The removal of sludge and produce of drinking water for the population in our neighboring communities. These backup power systems are not maintained or refurbished. The ability to provide the services will become impaired. So it's imperative that we get this done. This is a requirement contract estimated at a cost of $800,000 over the life. And this looks like operating capital funds will be used as appropriate. And the legislation will lead to a requirement contract for 2 years.
All right, and Director, this is for our to assure that if something goes down, that the backup stuff is working, correct?
That is correct.
Do we know over the last year or so how often we've had to use any of the backup material?
I would yield to the commissioner on the water side, and then Joy can speak to the electric side, maybe.
Yeah, thank you, Director, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Division of Water made major investment in backup generation after the big blackout in 2003, when we lost the ability to deliver water everywhere. So we invested $25 million at the time to back up the entire water system, basically, so that we could operate indefinitely if the entire grid were to go down again. Clearly, since '03, we've not had a total grid go down, but we do have occasion where an individual electric substation may go down and we lose feed to one of our pump stations, for example. And so the backup generation kicks in a case like that, where one of our pump stations is now operating on generator for several hours until the electric utility gets the service restored. And I want to say probably a couple times a year that happens, Mr. Chairman, where we are running generators in that mode.
All right, and Commissioner Perry with CPP?
Our backup generator has been used for our 1300 location, and we haven't used that for any backup for generation. We have turned it on for testing, but we have not used it for any backup due to an outage.
And then for an outage, Director or Commissioner, in order to use this, for example, if a car hits a pole and the electric line goes down and people lose power, we don't have that ability to hit the switch on a backup generator and start producing, because obviously there's a disconnect with a pole or a wire or something like that, correct?
To the council chair, you're absolutely correct. We do not have that ability.
Then what would be an example for Cleveland Public Power to use one of the backup generators?
If our main office facility was out of power.
Okay. All right, any questions on this one from my colleagues? All right, hearing none, 665-2020 stands approved. Madam Clerk, if you could read 666 as well.
Ordinance number 666-2020 by council members Casey and Kelly by departmental request, authorizing the purchase by one or more requirement contracts of labor, materials, and equipment necessary to perform tree trimming services for the Division of Cleveland Public Power, Department of Public Utilities, for a period of 2 years.
All right, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cleveland Public Power is responsible for trimming and clearing of tree brush and other vegetation in close proximity to our energized distribution power lines located on the public and or private right-of-ways along the initial clearing of vegetation as needed to the extension of electric service. Tree trimming is obviously essential to providing reliable electric to Cleveland Public Power customers. I appreciate council's indulgence last year with increasing that budget line item. It has showed early signs of success, and we want to continue to do that. The anticipated estimated cost is approximately $850,000 over a 2-year period of time. So again, I appreciate council and budgeting this amount, which helps us be proactive with regard to maintenance.
All right, and Director, when it comes to tree trimming around our power lines and everything, how much work do we contract with Van Kuren as opposed to using urban forestry?
Mr. Chairman, I will yield to the commissioner, but we generally don't use urban forestry to trim around power lines. We do use Van Kuren along with our own tree trimming crews, which we have, I believe, 2 internally. So I don't know if it's Bernie or Joy who may want to address that issue.
As it stands now, Van Kuren is unable to get 10 feet within a tree. If a limb is 10 feet to a power line, they don't have the capabilities and the training to touch it. So we always have to get lines cleared either by our tree trimmers, or we'll contact Van Kuren. Even when urban forestry has an issue with a hanger, if it's close to a power line, we have to go out and trim that first prior to them being able to do anything.
Okay. And then one other question. In areas where CPP is not providing electrical, far west side of Cleveland, and we'll say, for example, a tree needs to be trimmed around a power line, even though it's not CPP's area. Does CPP still handle that because we own the poles?
The only areas that we would do that is if we own the light poles. That would be an instance we would trim it out because we are responsible for that.
Okay. I'm going to open this one up to our colleagues. Councilman Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, very quickly, I just want to thank the commissioner through you, Chairman. I want to thank the Commissioner Perry for her great response with issues in our ward, especially tree trimming. While we're on this legislation, tree trimming has been very, very, very responsive. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Councilman Brancatelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, allowing me to sit in this committee. Tree trimming has become obviously quite a topic, and we've lost power numerous times on CPP. Just lost power again this morning on the west side. And a lot of that revolves around tree branches and bad weather. And since bars aren't open until 2 o'clock anymore, we kind of took that one out of the equation. some of that back and forth that we've been getting with urban forestry, and both have been, communicating well with us. When we have an issue around tree trimming around power lines or tree trimming in general, we turn it over to urban forestry. Urban forestry comes back and says the CPP needs to come and trim those lines. Does that communication happen automatically when we make a request to urban forestry or public works for tree trimming? Or is that something that the council person's expected then to come back and go back out to CPP and say urban forestry said it's around power lines?
Director?
I'm going to yield to Bernie on this. He handles our tree trimming initiative, and but I don't believe the council has to close the loop on that. But go ahead, Bernie.
No, they do not. Jennifer Kipp contacts me anytime they need anything trimmed out so that they can complete their work. So whether it's a council complaint or whatnot, we go ahead and address that issue. You do not have to close the gap.
Okay, and so on that point, generally we've been communicating with our contact for CPPs. Should we be going directly to your department when we know that there's lines touching that need to be trimmed?
Yes, Councilman, you can actually just reach out to me if you would like to. bjackson@cpp.org.
I'm going to rely on John James to communicate that back to us, so I'll make sure we get that right. And then secondly, and I appreciate, as the director pointed out, new crews were hired, expanding and being more proactive on tree trimming in a very strategic way and going through neighborhoods. And so we have seen that. But the other question then is, so CPP and CEI have both said, we trim around the water supply lines. We do not prune trees.
Yes.
So that still holds true?
Yes. Yes,
Okay,
it does. Our metaphor as far as trimming trees, we don't trim trees for 10 years as other utilities may, because we know we're the forest city. So we don't trim back as far, so we try not to make it as
aesthetically pleasing.
Yes. We actually try not to, but in some cases that we have to in order to be reliable.
We have legacy trees in our tree lawns, and we all seen the touchdown Jesus that comes through when the sloth comes through. Not picking on any Notre Dame fans. So for us, as we communicate to our constituents, when they do see CPP, even though it's a city-owned utility, we are trimming for the power lines, but urban forestry is responsible for pruning and trimming trees separately.
Correct.
And then a couple of quick follow-ups. You had mentioned that Van Kuren is not trimming around power lines now?
Van Kuren does trim out our power lines.
Oh, they do trim. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And go ahead.
I think I think Bernie was referring to urban forestry does not.
Yeah, I understand. Urban forestry does not. Now, and that was my second question. My understanding was that urban forestry has brought on some additional crews as well. And are they also trying to get certified to trim around power lines?
Well, I know urban forestry, they were trying to get a certification where we would only have to give them a 2-foot clearance. As it stands right now, if it's a bale wire or if it's a power line, we have to give them 10 feet. As of yet, they have not had that certification.
Okay, but there are
other options, but yeah.
Okay, so they'll work, but they may be working towards that.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, that would be helpful. I mean, I think when you look at pruning and trimming and the 2-foot clearance gives a good opportunity to have all hands on deck, and tree trimming has become a huge focal point. And I was on a call this morning with Chairwoman Carol Johnson, who recalls being on the tree commission when we used to have a tree commission. And it would be great to have a tree commission again. We still have a boxing commission. Don't know why, because we haven't had boxing events. But we have not brought back the tree commission. We're hoping that Chairperson Casey continues to work that. I think that'd be very helpful as we communicate across all these different levels. So those are my questions, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Brackatelli. And on 2 notes, one, Bernie, you're not going to get off that easy with just blurting out your email address real quick. So if you could provide your contact information, if you don't mind,
Yes.
to John James, so that we can have your number and your email address. And Councilman Brackatelli, myself and Councilman McCormick are working on that tree commission, and you'll see something relatively soon regarding that. Speaking of Councilman McCormick, Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair to the director, appreciate your attention to the tree trimming and how important it is to CPP and reliability. So just one question and one comment. One, is this request sufficient to meet the needs for tree trimming for over the next 2 years to provide reliable power?
Yeah, to the councilman, yeah, I believe it is adequate at this particular time, but we do want to increase our internal resources as well. And so when we do that coupled with the outsourcing with Van Kuren, I think it would be satisfactory, yes.
Thank you. And satisfactory from the utilities perspective, not because Chief Dumas said there's no more quarters to shake out of the cushions.
No, it is based on our tree trimming initiative and what we have to get done as it relates to our strategic approach to tree trimming initiative around secondary and primary power.
Thank you. And Chair, as I've to the director, as I've said in previous committee meetings, you know, I can't tell you who to hire from a contractor perspective. You all have teams to do that. But what I will just say is that, you know, CPP compared to other utilities does through their contractors and internally does a much better job than other utilities. It is noticeable in our communities. They care more. They are much more thoughtful when it comes to our forest, our canopy. So I would just hope that you all consider past performance when looking at who to go with, because I think the folks that you've hired in the past and have used have done a good job.
Yeah, thank you to the councilman. I appreciate that. Van Kuren has done a good job for us, and we hopefully will continue to move in that direction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. And Councilman Polensek.
Thank
Unmute mic.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable colleagues, to the administration. I just want to chime in. Obviously, you have a historical perspective here. In the day, and I want to pose this to the administration and to my colleagues. In the day, we didn't use outside contractors. We've come to the point of utilizing outside contractors because we've let internally, not we, the administrations over the years have let the internal operation of tree trimming, both within Cleveland Public Power and within urban forestry, decline to very dangerous levels. So in the day, the Cleveland Public Power would contract with urban forestry to do the trimming. And so the money, let's say this $800,000 would go into urban forestry so you could bring on more employees and more equipment. And then as you went on over the years, you really built a critical internal structure of being able to address trees and tree trimming, which is so critical. I have a very heavily forested ward, and I have a large tree canopy. So obviously I'm confronted with, as I was yesterday, with a lady who called me off of 185th, who said she had been repeatedly calling to get the wires, the branches cut around the wires, because she contracted with a private trimmer, and he wouldn't touch them because of the wires. And she told me, and I thank goodness I sent it over to Joy, but she had called repeatedly to get these wires, to get these tree limbs addressed because it's destroying her roof, but she can't do it because of the wires. So we've got to figure out a better way, an enhanced way to respond to those citizens who are trying to be proactive. You know, I encourage that all the time for, you know, citizens to be proactive in my community. And many of them do that, but they need reciprocation from the city. The other issue I wanted to raise with the director, and again, I want to go back to this whole thing about contracting, utilizing city crews to trim trees. Why aren't we at least thinking about that again, as we did in the day? And I can tell you it worked. But again, administrations over the years let the numbers fall, let the equipment fade out. So now we have to use outside contractors more than ever before to address not only this issue, but a whole range of issues across the city. So I'll wait for a response from the director on that in a moment. But this issue with the private companies, AT&T and the cable company, where you have tree limbs on their wires, or in many of our wards, and I don't think I'm any different, where I have this invasion of vines. I guess you want to call them invasive species, that these vines that go up the poles and then go on the wires. I've never seen anything like it in the day. Now I've got these vines growing all over. These utility companies, obviously the cable company is a franchise in the city of Cleveland. So I have these vines on their wires. I have tree limbs on their wires, and yet they will not respond. And I want to, again, hear from the director as well, since they are franchised within the city of Cleveland. Don't we got to have a better control over saying to them, you got to get out there and cut this stuff, or you got to get out there and trim this stuff. So I want to hear about the internal crews, and then I want to hear about that issue from the chair, from the director, Mr. Chairman.
Director?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, to the councilman. In terms of our staffing levels, that is why we have taken this approach to increase our internal tree trimming crews. We have augmented the outsourcing to augment our tree trimming crews. But we are now moving in a direction where we're starting to bring more internal resources so that we have our own crews. And so that's the purpose for doing that. If we continue to do that, then we may be able to cut back on the use of Van Kuren. But we are using a strategic approach to go through each ward to trim trees. So I think we're trimming a whole lot more than what we used to as a part of this initiative. And so I think that it's important to have internal resources, but it's also important to have external resources when we need that help to augment our own internal resources. So we are moving in that direction, Councilman Polenzek, with the hopes that we can become less dependent on Van Kuren, although they've done a great job for us. As it relates to AT&T and other utilities, we reach out to them all the time. And our contacts, trying to contact them and get them, it is a very difficult proposition. And I don't know what we need to put in place to that we are able to do something to force them to do it. I don't know what that is, but I am certainly open to suggestions from a legislative standpoint as what we can do about that. But it is very difficult when we reach out and they do not respond, and now we're put in a situation. So unfortunately, we don't regulate them, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge to the councilman. It is a challenge.
Mr. Chairman, can you still hear me?
Yes.
As it pertains to the cable company, they are franchised within the city of Cleveland. Now, obviously, you have the law department. We don't. The administration operates the law department. But I'm willing, and I'm sure all my colleagues are, I'm willing to consider any type of legislation or suggestions that you might make. But because we've all got this problem, we have wires hanging. I have rolls of wires tied up to utility poles that they don't address. Just a mess. It's like, and yet they don't do it in the suburbs. See, that's what I noticed, because I have joined Brattonall and joined the city of Euclid. I don't see them doing that in the suburbs. They don't leave a mess in the suburbs, or they don't have vines and branches all over wires. Because for some reason they feel that they have to address that in suburban communities. So again, I would request respectfully through the chair to you, Director, have the law department, if there's any things that we need to maybe toughen up, stiff.
On that point, Mr. Chairman?
Hang on, I think Councilman Polenzek froze, so I didn't hear the end of his question, if anybody else did.
It's AT&T cut off his service.
Go ahead, Councilman Polenzek. until, Councilman Brackatelli, till he can get back on.
Okay.
You win that AT&T.
Yeah, just on that point, and then I think the director and we can have our law department. We have the right to do improvements when somebody does not. So if the railroad company does not repair their tracks or repair the street repairs, we have the right to go make those repairs and bill that. It's under state law. So I think we have a right to go in and clear those lines and go back and bill them after we give them notification that here, you have to clear these lines. These are our poles, and we have a right to keep our poles safe. So if they don't do that, we have a right to go do that and then bill them under the nuisance law. So I think we can look at that and figure out how we can be proactive to give them notification to clear them, and if not, then we'll clear them and bill them.
To the chair, to the councilman, you're exactly right, and I think we have done that in the past. We have been unfortunate when we have intervened when we bill them not getting paid. So we still have a kind of a twofold problem here, but we will reach out to law to see what other remedies may be out there from a legislative or operation standpoint. Because again, if we go out and do it, it becomes a resource problem. We're doing this, and then we got to go and do their work as well. And we talk about staffing levels and everything else. So it becomes a resource issue at some point. But obviously we're going to do what we can when we can. But in most cases, Chairman Brackatelli, we don't get that money back.
we have a wonderful collection firm in David Douglas that the city hires. I'm sure going after a large corporation, he would just drool over that opportunity. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
In the past, that's for sure.
All right. Director, obviously tree trimming around these lines are very important. We know that when there's outages, that's usually in some way, shape, or form, one of the direct or indirect causes for it. And you can tell by the questions that council is concerned about this. So hopefully with this legislation and the help of Van Kuren, we can try to get this somewhat under control. Without objection, 666, 2020 stands approved. Ordinance number 679, 2020 by council members Casey and Kelly by departmental request, authorizing the Director of Public Utilities to exercise the first option, renew the joint registration agreement with the Medical Center Company as authorized by ordinance number 1467-18, passed January 28, 2019. Director?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are regulated through NERC, which is North American Electric Reliable Corporation. This is a one-year renewal of the current joint registration agreement under the contract agreement. Cleveland Public Power completes all the necessary testing and functions in accordance with NERC standards. This includes 24/7 monitoring in Cleveland's Public Power's local control center and testing intervals of all equipment. Also, CPP completes the necessary functions to be in compliance with PJM, which is CPP's transmission operator. The current joint registration agreement ends December 31st, and there's no cost to CPP. The Medical Center Company will pay the $75,000 annual services for CPP. In this particular case, the length of the contract is 1 year with an option to renew for another year.
All right, and I know this is probably just more of an educational piece of legislation, but CPP is a member of NERC, right? The North American Electrical Reliability Corporation, as determined by MCCO. Can you just kind of tell us how MCCO is involved, why we're a member of NERC? This is one of those educational pieces that is no cost to the city, but is very important.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to yield to Bernie or Joy, but it is our transmission and capacity, and we are regulated by them to make sure that we can meet that standard. for a transmission operator. But Joy and/or Bernie, if you care to elaborate, or AD Kane, if he's on the line.
I'm going to yield to Rich Burton, who's here, who's been working with this for the last year or two.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Chairman, Council. MCCO, or the Medical Center Company, has a substation which is fed by our transmission lines, our 138,000 volt transmission lines. As such, because of the voltage level, it's governed by NERC and the NERC standards. And those standards require testing and monitoring of those facilities. So just as we do our own substations, we then include the testing that we do for the medical center substation. We've got they're not set up to do it, quite frankly, because you know, they're in the business of distributing the electricity, and they really don't concern themselves that much with the high voltage, the 138 facilities. So because we've got the wherewithal, the knowledge, and we know what the rules and regulations are, we just include it in as part of the substation testing that we do, and we get compensated for it.
All right, and is being a member of NERC something we have to do, or is it something that we opt to do?
We have to. We're governed by them. It's almost that. I'm not even sure membership is the correct word. I think we're under their rules and regulations because of the voltage class, because of our ownership of the 138,000 volt transmission facilities.
All right. Any questions regarding 679-2020? Seeing none, 679-2020 stands approved. 732-2020 by council members Casey and Kelly by departmental request, determining the method of making a public improvement of rehabilitation of the Kirtland Crib and authorizing the Director of Public Utilities to enter into one or more public improvement contracts for making the improvement. Director?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This crib was constructed between 1896 and 1904. And the structure protects the intake to the 5-mile tunnel that runs 50 feet below the bottom of Lake Erie to the Kirtland pump station along the East Shoreway. The primary element of this project is to rehabilitate the major steel supporting beams and/or the replacement of the crib belt, and building components are also in the scope. Additionally, the city is including repainting, security, solar, electric supply, water quality control, corrosion protection and safety, and some roofing and other structural elements go to the task. This project will make it like new, and with no additional major renovations needed for the commissioners telling me for at least the next 30 years. So we welcome this. It is quite pricey. It's approximately $16 million. The proceeds will come from future bonds. However, this project is estimated to take about 3 years to complete. So it's a big project, and I will yield to the commissioner for any questions with his historical perspective.
Commissioner?
Thank you, Director, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, as the Director indicated, it's time. We've been looking at it for some time now. We have 4 water treatment plants, as I think you all know. Every one of them has its own intake. This is the only one that's above water. And being in the harsh marine environment, it takes a beating. The ice forces that are on that thing in the wintertime when there's heavy ice loading in the lake is basically putting tremendous force and loading onto the side of the crib. In 1991, we actually extended the crib out about a foot. We added steel about a foot away from the old outer belt and poured concrete in there. And that was an effective approach. Even that is taking some beating though, and the level below the lake is showing some wear and tear. Additionally, the The crib itself is this conic struct, this cone that basically comes up from the bottom, and towards the top, there's these crisscrossing major steel beams that holds everything up on the upper level. There's a concrete floor that rests on those steel beams, the building that rests on it, all that rests on top of that. And there's a little bit of corrosion that we're seeing there. Certainly, there's no risk whatsoever of any sort of imminent failure or anything like that. It's still got a long life, but this is being proactive and taking care of that infrastructure and making repairs that, as the director indicated, should last a very long time for us.
All right, and the crib is where it all starts, correct?
Crib
So
is where it all.
We've got to make sure that we maintain the crib. And Director and Commissioner and AD Kane, not now and not anytime in the next couple of months, because it's going to be very close. I mean, very cold out. However, I would like for the council members to take a trip out to the crib. We all see it from the shoreway, but I don't know when the last time council was out to the crib to see kind of where our whole water system starts. So in the spring, once the weather breaks, I'd like to plan a committee hearing or a committee road trip or boat trip, whatever you want to call it, out to the crib. I don't know, probably Councilman Polensek, I don't know, maybe even Brancatelli on this call may be the only ones that have ever been out there, but it's definitely something that we want to do in the springtime. Any questions on 7/32/2020? Mike, was you just waving or you putting your hand up? I know you're Vikita now. No?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, my internet went down here, so Nikita's trying to figure out how to get it back up. No, I think that's a wonderful suggestion, Mr. Chairman. We haven't been out there for a very, very long time. It must have been maybe 10, 15 years, if not longer than that we went out to take a look at the crib. And it really is a magnificent structure. And when you think about when it was built, how advanced the Cleveland Division of Water was, I mean, at the time. I mean, I think I'm always impressed, and I'm always made aware of how advanced our system was and is compared to other major cities across the country. You know, that is there. What does Alex know what the date was the crib was constructed?
Yes, I think the director indicated up front that it took 8 years of construction. It commenced in 1896, and in 1904 it was put into service. And interestingly enough, it's a long cone, if you will, and it was hauled out into sight horizontally and then lowered into place in its final location, and then major rock placed around it as ballast to kind of hold it in place. So really was amazing construction, especially for its time.
Yeah, and I want to make it clear to all my colleagues, I was not here at the time that it was floated up. So, but it's been a magnificent. When you think about it,
I've seen your picture on here.
A magnificent structure, and so I totally concur with doing whatever we have to do to make sure that it is functioning, that it's well maintained, and we continue to be advance our system. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Thank you. And when we do go out there, Commissioner, if we could please get the history of everything, and of course the importance of, you know, how Garrett Morgan was involved in all that as well, and how he was really before his time.
Yes, certainly.
Hearing no objections, ordinance number 7/32/2020 stands approved. Ordinance number 750/2020 by council members Casey and Kelly, authorizing the Director of Public Utilities to enter into one or more contracts without competitive bidding with, is it Hatch or Hawk?
Hawk
Company for labor, materials, and services needed to collaborate, maintain, and repair laboratory and inline process equipment that is used to test drinking water manufactured by the Hawk Company, including replacement equipment and parts for the Division of Water, Department of Public Utilities, for a term of 2 years. Now, Director, I never am a fan of direct contracts. However, I've learned in the utility world that everything is proprietary to everybody owning their own equipment and maintaining it. So with that being said, 7/50/2020.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And not everything, but most things definitely are. And we welcome you to the committee to come to the crib at an appropriate point in time in the future. Cleveland Division of Water equipment includes, but not limited to, the following analytic instruments and manufacturing by Hawk: turbidimeters, chlorine analyzers, particle size analyzers, pH meters, switches, controls, fluoride analyzers, and associated appurtenances. Hawk representatives will perform calibration, preventative maintenance, and appropriate repairs to the instrumentation and control. The Ohio EPA requires that Cleveland Water instrumentation be maintained and serviced by the manufacturer of the actual equipment. So this legislation will lead to a direct award for a 2-year term. And the total for the 2 years is approximately $449,314. But this is a direct award to the manufacturer of that equipment.
All right. Any questions on 7/50/2020? Seeing none, 7/50/2020 stands approved. Ordinance number 7/54/2020 by council members Casey and Kelly, determining the method of making the public improvement of renewing, repairing, or replacing various water mains in 2021 and 2022, and authorizing the Director of Public Utilities to enter into one or more public improvement contracts for making the improvement. Now, I know back in January of 2020, an email was sent out to each council member with any and all projects that are going on in their ward. I am just right now resending that email to each and every council member. But before I do that, Director?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Distribution mains 16-inch in diameter and smaller are secondary arteries to the Cleveland water system. Approximately 1,300 miles exist in the city proper. Several mains are over 100 years old or older. Aging water mains, we can experience a number of problems, including excessive main breaks resulting in disruption of service and lower fire flows and discolored water incidents, et cetera. And so it is very, very important. Renewing the water mains in the city is necessary with our ongoing reinvestment in the distribution system. Again, we are moving away from cleaning and lining to replacement. The cost of these projects is estimated about $10 million over 2 years, although the ordinance will authorize both years. We're initially looking at just the funding of the first year at $5 million. Again, this legislation would authorize a public improvement contract to replace the mains when appropriate.
All right, and Assistant Director Kane, I know you forwarded me that email last week. I just tried forwarding it to all the council members, but it was rejected by the server on my half. So if you could please do me a favor and resend that same email that you sent me just out to all council members so that they can be refreshed on any projects that are occurring in their wards.
Understood. I can send it to John James and he could send it, or to Kimberly. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
It's just, it was sent out last January and I'm, you know, with the inundatedness of emails, it just may have gotten by some council members.
And to the chairman, there will be another email coming, communication coming to council members this coming January. So in just 2 months.
All right. Any questions on 7/54/2020? 7/54, seeing none, without objection stands approved. Ordinance number 792/2020, authorizing the Director of Public Utilities to enter into one or more contracts with Motorola Solutions, Inc. for professional services necessary to provide an update to the microwave system proprietary equipment and for maintenance and services of hardware and software for the Office of Radio Communications, Department of Public Utilities for a period of 4 years. Director?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Office of Radio Communication is requesting legislation to authorize the purchase of an update of the microwave system, which again is proprietary equipment. Office of Radio Communication utilized a direct award contract with Motorola Solutions to provide the necessary maintenance and service of that equipment. And they have used this equipment over the last 10 years. Motorola is the authorized sole source provider to maintain Motorola equipment. There's no other authorized dealer available to provide these particular services and maintenance due to the proprietary diagnostic software covered by various patents and copyrights. So with that said, Mr. Chairman, we would add that the anticipated cost is about $1.5 million over a 4-year period.
And this is to maintain and upgrade the 800 megahertz system that they're using.
To the chair, Mr. Chairman, yes, correct.
Any questions on 792, 2020? Seeing none, 792, 2020 stands approved. Madam Clerk, I don't have 810 either. It didn't print out. Can you read 810, 2020 for us if you could, please, Madam Clerk?
Ordinance number 810-2020 by council members Casey and Kelly by departmental request, authorizing the Director of Public Utilities to enter into an amendment to contract number PS 2020-48 with CHN Housing Partners to provide services under a water crisis assistance program.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Director?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. CWD and utilities in general has a great partnership with CHN Partners, currently servicing approximately 3,100 customers annually in our affordability program. The Division of Water is seeking legislation to direct a contract award with CHN Partners to provide the professional services to the Water Division's affordability program, including administrative services and other related services to determine customers' eligibility for a 40% water bill discount program. CHN has worked very closely with us and developed systems and approving qualified applicants. CWD is seeking to add professional services for what we call the Crisis Assistance Program, including administrative services and other related services to determine customers' eligibility of this program. This program is separate. We're asking to amend the direct contract to add the affordability program, with the affordability program to add the crisis assistance program as well at a cost of about $200,000. This is part, Mr. Chairman, of an affordability and equity effort as we have worked with the U.S. Water Alliance, with several other cities, Atlanta, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and others. This criteria that we're setting up with the crisis assistance program is one that for ones with hardship, meaning lost job, divorce, illness, those type of things. And we're working on that criteria with CHN, but this gives us the ability to add another layer of affordability and call it the Crisis Assistance Program. And we're excited about this program moving forward.
All right, I have two questions. One, this is a new program, correct? It's not?
Chair to the councilman, that is correct.
Okay, and then when a crisis assistance program, and you mentioned hardship, is this income eligible based?
It's income, it's lost job, it's hardships in these particular cases, and we're working out obviously the particulars on it, but it is income driven as well. It is, and if you can document the hardship that you have and the lost wages, or you lost your job, or any of those type of things, now you become eligible, and CHN will administer this program like they administer affordability and other programs.
All right, so it's income based at your current situation. For example, somebody may be making $100,000 a year. They're not eligible for anything. However, they lose their job. They're out of work. We don't base it on the 100,000 that they made. We base it on their current situation.
That is correct, because we have the other affordability program that is specific to its income driven. And then we have one or the homestead, which is for its age driven, 65 and older. This one kind of goes into another category, if you will, based on the crisis that you may be in at that particular time. But again, we're still working out some details with regard to all the eligibility requirements. And Deborah Mitchell is not here, but she's been working with CHN on this crisis assistance program. But we're excited about adding another element to affordability.
And this is just for water, correct?
That is correct, yes.
All right. Move to questions, Councilman Polensek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, honorable colleagues, to the director. Could you just walk it through? How's it work? Someone calls our office. They're having a problem. Who do we refer them to? Who do we plug them into? Walk us through it.
We turn them into Cleveland Housing Network. Cleveland Housing Network administers this program. And so they know what the criteria is, what the eligibility criteria is, because we're actually paying them to administer this program. And then obviously we would be crediting accounts and so forth. And that's why we're looking at $200,000, as obviously, we're just making sure that we know what our loss will be as we move forward. We don't know exactly how many folks will qualify. We don't know the particulars just yet, but CHN, a lot of the folks that are already on affordability or HEAP or something like that, they're using that information as they gather, but most folks will be directed directly to Cleveland Housing Network, and they would administer the project based on the eligibility requirements.
Okay, so could you supply us then, each member, based on this new program, you can supply us all the contact information, et cetera. I would greatly appreciate that. Whatever you can supply us would be helpful. At some point before the committee's over, I hope, and I don't know if this is the time to do it, or Mr. Chairman, I'll leave it up to you, where we can talk about this whole issue from what I understand, December 1st?
No, we're going to talk about that in miscellaneous. We still have.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Okay. So,
yeah, we still have one more piece of legislation.
Good. I want to get into that. But so outside of that, if he can supply us the information, Mr. Chairman, on this program, because all of us want to help those families that are struggling, that we know that are in need, that have lost their jobs or have fallen on hard times. So I support the legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions on 8/10/2020? Without objection, 8/10/2020 stands approved. We have one more piece of legislation, ordinance number 8/20/2020 by council members Casey and Kelly, authorizing the Director of Public Utilities to enter into an agreement with the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District for the treatment, for the treatment and disposal of water plant sludge generated at the Morgan, Baldwin, and Nottingham water treatment plants for the Division of Water, Department of Public Utilities. Director, this, I had to be sold on this piece of legislation, and for some of the reasons, as one is the estimated cost of $7.3 million, and the scheduled term of this contract is an indefinite term. And I'm not a fan of long-term contracts, especially what we just went through with CPP and going over AMP and stuff like that. I know that that's not what this piece is all about. However, this is an indefinite contract. So if you could explain 8/20 to us and
Okay.
let us know why it's an indefinite contract.
I will attempt to do that, and then we'll get into what we believe and why this is good for our water treatment facilities. One of the byproducts for drinking water treatment process is the residual solids, which is commonly referred to as sludge, right? Cleveland currently spends about 8 to 9 million a year to send our sludge or residuals from 3 treatment plants to regional sewer district. In the interest of reducing expenses, and Cleveland, we examined several other options for handling, including the installation of our own sludge handling equipment, and then landfills as it goes from the Crown plant, which is the one that we actually have our own sludge handling that does not go to regional sewer district. The estimated savings is approximately $2 million per year for this new agreement. And we've always been sending our sludge to, especially with these 3 treatment plants, to regional sewer district. And so when we talk about it, open-ended contract or indefinite contract, it is a little bit different because you would have to give a 5-year notice to actually get out of the contract. If we needed to build our own sludge facilities or our own sludge handling equipment, that would be the time frame, probably a little less, maybe 3 years to design it, build it, construct it, and all of those things. So there's not many options when it comes to handling sludge, although you can, like we do at Crown, which is not cost effective to do, but we're not tied into regional way out on the far west side. So it is, we've done our due diligence here. We did cost benefit analysis. We've had engineers come in and look at this in different ways. We think this is good for our treatment of handling of sludge, as well as savings of about $2 million. So the indefinite contract is something that we've been doing with regional for some time. It's not very many other options that you're going to look at in terms of sending that sludge to get it treated to come back out into our environment. And I will also allow the commissioner to add anything, but we've had a lot of meetings around this, and this is really the best option for Cleveland Water. You're muted.
Sorry about that. The dog was barking. I do want to note that that the scheduled term of the contract will have an indefinite term, but either party can issue a cancellation notice with the 5 years advance notice.
That's right.
So it is indefinite, but either side can issue without cause.
Without cause. Absolutely right, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, let me just jump in real quick. I mean, we struggled with this, and that clause, it was written that way expressly to protect the division of water. As the director pointed out, if regional sewer could terminate the contract with only 1 year notice, we'd be up a creek. We'd be in trouble. We would have an extremely difficult situation to try and come up with some alternate ways with treating that sludge. I mean, we could send the liquid out, which would probably be triple the cost until we built our own sludge presses to squeeze it and landfill it, which, as the director indicates, takes 3-4 years. We're just in the midst of completing at the Crown plant, and that's been about a 3-4 year project there. So that language was written that way for the precise reason of giving us the protection, the guarantee that that they couldn't pull the rug out from under us. We've had other contracts where the law department tells us the interpretation. If it's a 5 year, if it's a 10 year, with an annual rollover or renewal, fundamentally what you have near the end is then just a 1 year contract and susceptible to a 1 year termination. So it was written to make sure that we always have a minimum of 5 year advance notice. That is the only reason that language is written that way, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
And
Mr.
to
Chairman.
the director, are we currently under contract with them?
We are, and it's interesting enough that when we looked There is no term language whatsoever in that current contract that was signed in 1987. It is unspoken in that contract. So if either side attempted to, if that contract remained in place, it would probably be up to the courts to determine the issue of what advance notice, because like I say, it's totally unaddressed in that current contract.
And then what happens to the current contract? Once we,
The current contract will be superseded by this new one.
Yeah.
Both sides are mutually agreeing to terminate the old contract and replace it with the new one.
okay.
And Mr. Chairman, this protects this protects both entities. And this really gives us what you call reasonable notice. You can't just up and go without some option and giving us time to do something else. And so this gives us that protection as it relates to reasonable notice to give a party an opportunity to explore other options.
Okay. And then currently we're spending between 8 and 9 million a year for them to remove our sludge, and this contract is for 7.9 million.
We say 7.3. Mr. Chairman, the 2 million of savings that we anticipate annually is a conservative number. We're expecting it could very well be even more than that. But we're being conservative as we say 2 million savings a year.
Well, I know you're saying the estimated cost is 7.3, but the current is contract number 1667. Is that the current contract, or is that going to be this contract?
That's the existing one as we speak.
Right.
That will be replaced.
Right. So currently we're paying 7,893,000 currently.
Yeah, and that varies, Councilman, Mr. Chairman, depending on what we're doing. We may have a basin, for example, at Baldwin that has a lot of sludge in it, and maybe this year we decide we need to clean it, and so we'll send a big bulk load to regional in that particular year. So it goes up and down. So while that may be the most recent 12 months, the other years it's been higher than that, Mr. Chairman.
And is this based on tonnage?
It is based, so the initial, and this is part of the change that we're making in this contract, I think we spelled it out there. It's based on the estimated amount of solids that we're sending them. And that is instrumentation to measure how much solids we actually send to regional sewer district depends on an awful lot of things. We know that the ratio between the amount of alum to the amount of solids, the alum is the chemical that we add to help settle out material from the lake. The ratio of alum to total solids we send them is constant, is fixed. We know what that ratio is, but our ability to measure the alum, we know how much we buy, we know how much we use, is far more accurate. So we in regional mutually agreed to say, okay, we'll switch the unit of measure to pounds of alum that we use. And base it on that. The regional is unaffected dollar-wise by using the different unit of measure, but we base it on the amount of alum that we add to the treatment process, and that is the formula then that's used to determine how much we pay regional.
Okay. All right, I'll open it up to questions from my colleagues. Councilman Slife, did you have a question? Okay. To my colleagues, I just want to let them know, and just to remind them that this is a contract that, if it's passed, is an indefinite term with a 5-year cancellation on either side. And again, I'm not an advocate or a fan of contracts that are indefinite or long-term. However, this one to me does make sense when it was explained, and it did take some convincing on the part of DPU to get me to hear this one. So I think it's going to be a good thing long-term for the city.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would just add that this, unlike the other contracts you're talking about, provides a savings. So
If we had to do this ourselves, it would take us 5 years to build whatever it is we needed to build.
and the cost would be more.
Right, exactly. All right, seeing no questions without objection, 8/20/20 stands. Oh, Councilman Polensek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to the director and to the commissioner. I'm just trying to get a better understanding. When you're talking sludge, are you referring to what we were in the day would refer to as backwash?
Okay, I'm gonna let the commissioner answer that, but that's, well, it's a little different. It's the
Well,
treatment process. It's the treatment process.
Councilman, it's related to that, okay? So think of raw lake water as it comes in, has particles in there, okay? And the treatment process removes it at various stages. One of the stages is in the settling basins, which are familiar at Nottingham or the other plants. I like to call them these huge underground concrete swimming pools. We add the alum, and the alum settles to the bottom and sweeps a lot of the solids to the bottom. We collect those up and send those to regional sewer. The next major step in the treatment process is the filters. And the filters collect the finer particles as they attach to the sand. We backwash the filters when they get dirty enough, and the backwash is removing those particles that the filters captured. And those particles that we remove in the backwash cycle are also then thickened up and sent to regional sewer district. So you're spot on, Councilman, that the backwash process is a part of the process in collecting these solids.
Okay, so, and as a result of that, are we still pumping that material to the regional sewer district?
Mr. Chairman, we do. At all three plants, we hit a regional sewer district interceptor. In some places, they're relatively close. Nottingham, it's close. Baldwin, it's close. Morgan, it's a little bit farther. But there were some, back when this contract was done back in the 80s, we installed some sewer mains and some sewer pumps, if you will, where we pump these solids, and it then reaches the regional sewers interceptor, and from there it goes to the regional sewer treatment plants. Interestingly enough, Baldwin and Nottingham actually both send the sludge to Easterly, and then regional repumps it from Easterly to Southerly. Morgan sends it to Southerly. So Southerly, being the very large facility, handles all of our solids from all three plants ultimately.
So you've indicated that, but at Crown, you have to physically haul it, correct? Is that what you said?
Yeah, Crown being west of the Rocky River, the regional sewer district system does not go east of or west of the Rocky River. They're not out there. So all those communities out there, Fairview, North Olmsted, Bay Village, Westlake, Rocky River, they all have their own local wastewater treatment plants. None of them are designed or set up to take our Crown solids. They just can't do it. So instead, we were forced to build a sludge treatment process. We used to have these old plate presses that basically squeezed the water out, and then we turned it into, we called it cake, if you will, thickened solids, and we trucked those to a landfill. We have just, as authorized by you guys, by Cleveland Council, replaced the old plate presses with a newer technology. They were seeing their age, they were 30 years old, with a screw press. So basically think of a screw spinning, and that is the means by which the water gets squeezed out and the solids thickened up. But still, again, we then truck it off to a landfill thereafter.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, do we have a private contractor hauling that, or is that city vehicles hauling?
That's once a day. That is a bit much for us, so we do contract that out. And
Okay.
it's on average, it's one truck a day leaving Crown.
Okay, so once it gets to the Southerly treatment plant, are they still incinerating it?
Yes, they incinerate there, Mr. Councilman.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, I support this process 100%. I was here, unfortunately, when we were dealing with the old ways, and if I told you how they disposed of it in the day, you wouldn't believe it. They would, at Nottingham, they would dump it in Euclid Creek, physically release it into Euclid Creek, and it was unbelievable when they did it. You knew exactly, because the creek would turn completely black. And I don't know if they were doing it, what they were doing at the other treatment plants, but it was environmentally insensitive. It was environmentally dangerous. I was involved in that process years ago to end it at Nottingham. And so I know that it's a lot of money, but I can tell you it's environmentally friendly. It's going to save us money in the long run. And we never want to envision of getting back to the bad old days of releasing it into the environment as we once did. So I support the legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, it's a good thing we've become more environmentally friendly and that we're doing it what appears to be the right way in this day and age. All right, seeing no other questions, without objection, 8/20/2020 stands approved. Director, right before you were able to jump on this meeting, I had mentioned that we wanted to have the council wanted to have some miscellaneous. And I want to talk about, first of all, I want to again voice my frustration with the administration's lack of communication in regards to the moratorium being lifted on utility shutoffs. I know that it comes out in a press release. However, sometimes we don't get that opportunity to read that faster than some of the media. So the way that I found out about the moratorium being lifted was through a news station calling me, wanting comment on it. And of course, I handled the media a little differently. So I didn't comment because I didn't know at that time. And I understand that, and I know that the city of Cleveland was the first, probably one of the first ones in the state to declare a moratorium even before the state did. And we're one of the last ones to lift the moratorium. A lot of cities around the state were lifted in June and July and even August. And I understand that we're going into December before the moratorium on utility shutoffs is lifted. The question is, and I know that a lot of my colleagues have the same question, is what is the plan? I know on December 1st, we're not just going to automatically start shutting off utilities. So there's got to be a process or a plan in place. So if you could walk us through all the utilities, if the process is the same for each of the three utilities, or if it's going to be different, we're going to start getting a lot of phone calls. People have already reached out to me in regards to letters that they've received saying that the moratorium's being lifted. So what is the plan come December 1st?
Okay, let me start off, Mr. Chairman, by I concur with you, AD, and Kane and I did speak about our failure to notify, and so I will take responsibility for that. That is certainly something that we should have done.
Well, and on that point, Director, this isn't the first time that something like that, and I believe that the council is very cooperative in working with DPU, right? I mean, I think we have a very good working relationship. But something as important as our residents calling us and us not having a path forward for that in the future, if we could maintain that relationship of open communication so that we would know. I'm not saying we have to be involved in the decision making, but once the decision has been made, if we could get a little bit of advance notice so that when we start getting the phone calls, we don't look like we don't know what's going on. Within reality, we didn't, right? And we don't. So if you could just lay out for us what the path is going forward for all three of the utilities.
Yeah, well, sure. And again, I concur. But as indicated, Cleveland placed a moratorium well before the governor's order and well after the director of the Ohio EPA ended on July 1st. Now, the decision to resume the collection and severance process was done with great concern and awareness of the financial difficulties and the vulnerabilities of many customers are facing due to the pandemic. So we do have financial relief tools. We put out a communication plan where we have sent postcards out outlining affordability programs and all of those things in the effort to try to get out in front of this. So to answer your question, Mr. Chairman, we are starting the collection and severance process, which means we're going back to sending notices. And so even before we did that, we sent a notice out, communication to the customers saying, we know this is tough times, but you are still responsible for paying your utility bills, and we are here to help in that effort. So many communication efforts have gone out. December 1st, we will lift the moratorium, but we will start the severance and collection process. Now, that process takes some time. So we would start the process all over. These are accounts that we're dealing with new. So we would send out our notices like we would normally do in our normal process, a 30-day, a 60-day, and get them ready. But our hope is to have our customers, once they know, we wanted to give them at least a 30-day notice to say, okay, this is coming. But that doesn't mean that, okay, December 1st, we're going to start disconnecting. It means that we're going to start the collection and severance process. And that process means that we have to adhere to the policies of the department. And so no, customers can't just arbitrarily be shut off December 1st without the severance process. And that has to, and that happens, that process takes a little bit of time to do. So that is an issue, and we've struggled with this, and we're really looking at going back to our regular process. And again, we weathered the storm for as long as we could, and obviously, you know, all the utilities are starting to be financially impacted by it, but it is not our intention to hurt. Our intention is to help and put them on affordability programs and other programs out there that we have currently, along with our heat programs and everything else that we've been doing massive communications on to get our customers to know that we're here to help. But we did have to set a hard line on when we're going to start to do this process, and there's no good time. I can just point out there's no good time to do this. So it's a balancing act, and but I don't anticipate December 1st, we're going to start shutting folks off. Now, I'm going to say, by saying that, I'm also going to indicate that I've gotten some inquiries from our Councilman Brancatelli, as well as Councilman Polenzek, on these slum landlords and things of that type nature. And so in the effort to try to help our most vulnerable, stressed neighborhoods, some landlords were able to utilize this to their benefit. And so I get that. But what I am going to go out on a limb and say is that when December 1st comes, get us the information that on your landlords, and you know, those are the ones that we will consider going after.
All right, and then you'd mentioned the process, right? The collection and severance process.
Yeah.
And I know we've been through this a number of times, but for those who are watching at home, is the process the same for all three divisions? Does each process have its own, or does each division have its own process?
The process is the same. The amounts may be different. I'm going to let Joy speak to the collection process in terms of CPP, but generally with water, it is a process in which you get at least 2 delinquent notices. You get a door hanger, you know, and you get the ability to understand that there's an appeal process. All of that is part of this process. And so that's what.
Does CPP have an appeal process?
They do. That was put in place, and I'll let Joy speak to that, but that was put in place some months ago. I think even prior to the pandemic. So, but there's a process, and so I'll let Joy speak to CPP. If you have any other questions on water, I'll be more than happy to address them. Joy?
The director and the chair. Yes, our process is, when there's a collection process, when the customer have exceeded the past due balance, which we have our threshold at, then that customer will receive a letter past the due date, 5 days after the due date. 10 days, if they have not responded after the due date, they will receive a second notification. After 10 days, we will then hang a card at their premise which is a courtesy card. It's not in our, that to notify them that we are now beginning the process for the severance process. However, as we begin this moratorium, we are in the winter rules. So the winter rules allow us to have a little more flexibility for what we accept. We do participate with the HEAP program. So if the person's call in with the HEAP program and are eligible by HEAP, we will accept that as a down payment and give them a payment arrangement with HEAP. If the person used the rent crisis to maintain service, they are allowed to pay the 1/3 or if as little as the $175 if eligible for either one of those programs. Then they're placed on a payment arrangement, but they will receive at least 3 notifications from Cleveland Public Power before we begin the disconnect process.
Okay. And I'm assuming water is similar?
It is, yes, pretty much the same. They will receive 3 notices. They would receive the door hanger, and they would receive the door hanger with outlines that they have the ability to appeal to the Water Review Board.
And then I know that Department of Public Utilities and Commissioner Perry mentioned it, the quote unquote unwritten winter rules, right? Can you, Commissioner Perry, kind of explain a little bit more in detail what the winter rules are?
The winter rules are established by the state, and we participate in the winter rules because we're eligible to receive up to $550. This year, I believe we're going to get up to $800. And that's from the HEAP funded program. By participating in that, if we accept that payment from the state, then the customer then is placed on a payment arrangement. That's the winter rules. Now, the winter rules are either to maintain service or to restore. In this case, we have no restoration, so it would be to maintain the service because all our customers are on that should be on, that notified us. So they would pay a percentage to maintain their service and be placed on a payment plan.
And when do the winter rules start and when do they end?
The winter rules for Cleveland Public Power begin November 1st and they'll end April the 15th. We follow the same sorry.
Director, is that the same with water winter rules?
No, there is not winter rules for Cleveland Water. There's a SODO because that's through HEAP, and we obviously don't deal with HEAP, but we do have Homestead and we do have affordability programs, but it is no winter rules for water. Although we do take in consideration real severe weather conditions that are really below, and if you shut somebody off, you got pipe freezing and all that. So we take all that in consideration, but there is no winter rules for Cleveland Water.
All right, and Director, and Commissioners, when I talk to you, I'm speaking to you in the back of my mind about your typical normal homeowner or renter in the city of Cleveland. But I know I have 2 other colleagues at least who want to talk in another aspect. So when I ask my questions, I'm asking those questions in regards to, the people who are living in their homes, own their homes, or, good renters and all that other stuff. So that's, kind of what I have envisioned in my mind when I ask those questions. Although I know I have 2 other colleagues who want to talk on the other aspect of that. One other question I have for you, Director, is the staff who's going to be answering the phones down at the Department of Public Utilities all educated, trained, ready to go with any of the questions that are going to come up when they start getting the phone calls? Is it going to be a universal answer, across the board?
Well, I'm going to answer that question by simply saying yes. We have adequate staff. We've increased staff over the last probably year when it comes to customer service, our customer service representatives. AD Kane has been working very closely with Lakita and Deborah Mitchell on this issue, and Joy with coming from customer service and being over that is also really privy to all that information. But yes, we are ready to go. We anticipated when we sent these communications out that we were going to get increased calls. And it's the same thing when we sent out all our communications, we knew we would get an influx of calls. And so far, we've been doing a pretty good job, and I think we'll continue to do so. Staffing levels are adequate.
Okay, good. So I just want to reiterate, and I'm going to do it one more time before we get off this meeting. If you receive a letter from Cleveland Water, Sewer, or CPP, I encourage residents to reach out to the utilities, that there's a process, there's a plan, and that the Department of Public Utilities is ready, willing, and able to help anybody who's in need or in danger of being shut off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, because we are cognizant of the challenges and we're working diligently with every customer to keep them in power and in water. We are here to help, and we have zero down payment plans. We have a lot of different options. So call in and utilize our services. Everyone has been trained and eager and ready to help.
And if you, and to the director, to Commissioner Perry, if you could just send over to council the appeal process for CPP, if anybody wants to appeal whatever it is that they want to appeal. And director, if we could get that same appeal process for water and sewer as well.
Yeah, that's not a problem. We will go through AD Kane to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, that's what I have on this. I want to move to Councilman Brancatelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, again, for allowing me to sit in this meeting. These are very important issues. And I think the director acknowledged already the issue that some of us have around absentee and slum landlords that have been delinquent for years. And my concerns are when the house goes vacant, to get in there and shut that water off. So anybody new coming in is going to have to either come in and do a lease deposit or something without having to deal with the landlord. And we can go to collections as we should for some of these landlords. So I appreciate your acknowledging that, Director, and we'll continue to work together. We have a wonderful organization called VAPAC that the city participates with Thriving Institute and staffing that and keeping track of these absentee and now out of town landlords again. So we look forward to working together with you on this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thanks, Councilman Brancatelli. Councilman Polensek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, honorable colleagues, and to the director, I want to just follow up. One of the things that I've told people who've called my office is make an effort, regardless of what it is, make an effort to put something down on your water bill, your sewer bill, your water bill, your CPP bill, make some type of effort. We're all aware of the families, and I'm extremely sympathetic because I can remember as a child or a young person when my mother fell in hard times and our utilities were getting shut off and how she had to go next door to use the neighbor's phone. And so I think about that all the time. I'm very sympathetic to families that are being stressed and economically hurt. But as I've indicated to you, Director, as you've mentioned, these people, and Councilman Brancatelli's mentioned as well, people who've played the system, who weren't paying their bills, these absentee landlords, these slumlords, who weren't paying their bills prior to the pandemic. I want to be assured that they don't play the system again. So I'm glad to hear that there's going to be an effort. You're going to be sending out the notices. You're going to be doing all of our due diligence to make it clear that you've got to come up with the payment. Now, I want to just zero in. So they can come up with a payment plan, correct?
To the council, yes, that's correct.
Okay. So anyone who's watching this who has a delinquent account, CPP, water, they can make a payment plan to make sure that those utilities stay on. So there's no dispute there, correct?
There's not a dispute. We're always going to try to get as much money as they can afford. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, we're here to help. So we are going to offer pay arrangements, especially due to the circumstances that we're facing right now.
Okay. Because, I know people that are struggling to pay their bills, but they're doing it. I mean, elderly, working poor families that have been dealt a very bad hand during this pandemic, they've been struggling. And I know those are the phone calls that I've received, and that's why I've encouraged them, try to put something down so you show good faith, that you acknowledge you owe, and you're trying to pay something. I'm just concerned about those folks who just totally disregard the bills for years, and now they're going to try to play this system again. Now, on tampering, I want to get this clear, because I just recently went around on an issue with tampering, where some characters came in and took over an abandoned home and jerry-rigged the utilities, and then I was told that we couldn't shut them off. Now, educate me. I want some clarification on tampering for both Cleveland Public Power and water.
Well, to the chair, to the councilman, with regard to water, if you tamper, we generally shut you off. There's a fee, a cost associated with if you want to get back service. It increases, every time exponentially. It is, AD, do you know the numbers right offhand for water?
On tampering, Director, well, we haven't been shutting anyone off during the moratorium.
Well, that's what I'm saying right there.
Outside of the moratorium, even it was the directive of the city of Cleveland, if there's somebody there that needs utilities, they have utilities. So after December 1st, obviously the tampering rules will be back into effect for CPP and Cleveland Water, and they'll be addressed immediately.
Well, see, that and right there is my rub. So they've come in, or they've taken over a home, and I was dealing with this in a Glenville neighborhood, took over a home, jerry-rigged, turned the water on, and then I got the email, well, we can't shut it off. But it's not even their home. It's not even their property. And they're living in there and then terrorizing the neighbors. So there's got to be a clear policy. You jerry-rig, you illegally, you tamper. End of story. Your utilities get shut off. I don't understand this.
Yeah, we definitely have that policy.
Well, you just said
through the chairman of the councilman, we were in the middle of a moratorium, and it was the policy of the city of Cleveland that somebody was there during the moratorium. So we were not shutting off.
Well,
but come December 1st, obviously our policies will be back into effect.
Well,
Councilman Polensek, I'm well aware of that situation. We've had the conversation with it. We'll work closely with AD Kane. We'll brief him on that. And I'm starting December 1st. I'm pretty confident that issue that you're dealing with will be addressed.
Okay, I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and because there's it's one thing to be trying to help a family who's in need. It's another thing for people to come in and take over a property. It's not even their property, then illegally turn the utilities on. And I understand with Clean Public Power, we can pull the meters. We can actually, and I want to thank Joy for actually on several cases coming out and having CPP take the drop, actually cut the drop. So if they wanted to shimmy up the pole with some kind of wire, God bless them, okay? Because that might be the last time they shimmy up a pole and touch a wire. But at the end of the day, there's got to be uniformity. You illegally turn your utilities on, then those utilities need to be shut off. And especially with abandoned properties, this is not only an issue of stealing from the city of Cleveland and the taxpayer, but it's also a safety hazard for the neighbors who live around it. Not knowing if there's going to be a fire or God knows who's in that property. I just think, again, we got to have a better message that's being sent out there in our communities. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Anybody else have anything for miscellaneous? Again, although I wasn't happy with the way that it was communicated that the moratorium was being lifted, I want to thank DPU and the administration for the extended moratorium that we did have in the pandemic. I couldn't imagine, and I don't want to ask for the request, but I'm sure that certain utilities are hemorrhaging, and we've been footing the bill for the last 9 months or so. And I'm glad that there's a collection and severance process in place and that we're just not going to start shutting off people. And Director, if we could kind of stay in communication with how that's going, or AD Kane, either one.
Yeah.
If we could just, because I'm going to be getting the calls from my colleagues and other individuals. And I want to be able to, to have open communication with everybody in regards to this. So again, I want to reiterate, if there's any family out there who receives any of the letters, please call the Department of Public Utilities. There is a plan in place. There is a process. No one's looking to get shut off. But if you do get those letters or you do get those notifications, please don't ignore them, because eventually the inevitable will happen and then you'll get shut off, and then you'll be contacting your council people. And then that's a whole nother process that we don't want to have to go through.
Yeah.
So-
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will make sure that we keep you, AD and I will keep you in the loop on what's going on. But I would encourage Councilman Brancatelli as well as Councilman, Polenzic's still there. To send us the information that you have regarding the accounts that you believe is tampered with, or whatever the case may be, so that we can address them appropriately. And I would ask you to send that information to my screen when I'm about to die here, to send that information to AD Kane, and he'll get that to the appropriate folks to take a close look at it.
Thank you.
All right. And again, I was just reiterating about the homeowners and everything. Don't ignore the process, but to the bad actors that we're talking about, your free ride could be coming to an end very soon once the moratorium is lifted. And I look forward to dealing with those type of individuals as well. Before we go, Councilman Brancatelli, you got your hand up one more time.
I just, thank you. I think your point's well taken, Councilman, Chairman. The city of Cleveland, the administration and council and the government has put in millions of dollars in rent relief and utility relief. And we have not run out of that resource. When we met with Housing Court, what we're seeing are folks just not applying. They're not applying because, quite frankly, the gun's not to their head yet. So they're not getting those shut-off notices. They're not getting the eviction notices because there's moratoriums. So we know there's going to be a rush once these notices start coming out. So I appreciate your support and encouragement that we need to put the word out there. Folks need to go and get the resources that are available. That's why we put those in place. So thank you for your compassion on this issue.
Okay. With that being said, if there's nothing else, we're going to adjourn this meeting until the call of the chair. Thank you, everybody. Have a great